Howie Roseman said he thought this draft was deep at the defensive line position, which is interesting because they have a couple of decisions to make on that line with Long and Graham this offseason. Is it a deep draft at that position? And some other questions with draft expert Scott Wright, draftcountdown.com, as we are into the draft season in Philadelphia. Scott, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you back, man, as unfortunately a little earlier than we had hoped, but still a good run here. And Howie Roseman said the other day, defensive line, and I think he meant end and tackles, was the depth of this draft. Would you agree with him there?
Yeah, absolutely. And even a year ago at this time, we kind of saw this coming, that this was going to be a D-line draft. And both end and tackle, and not only just the high-end guys, the Joey Bosa's, the Quentin Williams, the Ed Olivers that are going to be top 5, top 10 overall picks, but really good depth as well. Going down, I think, probably into the 4th or 5th round into day 3, which you don't always see along the defensive line. And no matter how many there's still teams that need them. So, one of the big things I'm going to be watching at the Senior Bowl next week is who emerges in that second tier. When I was working on my most recent mock draft, of course, I had all these great edge guys going off the board quick, Bosa, Clellan Ferrell, etc. But by the time I got in the middle of the first round, they are already kind of gone, and I was looking for other options. So I think there's an opportunity for someone like Montez Sweat from Mississippi State, or O'Shane Zamanis from Old Dominion, Jalen Ferguson from Louisiana Tech, one of those guys to do what Marcus Davenport did last year and go from maybe a fringe first-round pick into the middle of the first round. But no question, this is a really good draft for the defensive lineman, and that's what it's going to be known for, 10 years from now.
The Eagles drafted at number 25, and a lot of people would look at this team, Scott, and say they need a running back. Number one, is the first round now a viable spot for a team to take a running back, and is this draft going to have a lot of options at running back?
I think it's more palatable now to take a running back early than it was 5 years ago, just because of the success we've seen from some of those guys, whether it be Saquon Barkley, Todd Gurley, Zeke Elliott. But the problem is there isn't that high-end talent in this draft. I think if there's going to be a first-round running back, the guy who has the best chance to do it is Josh Jacobs from Alabama, who wasn't even, at least coming into the year, the star at that position on his own team. Damian Harris, the senior, was expected to be the guy, but Jacobs is the better prospect, in all honesty. He's a better athlete, he's faster, and he's a better all-around player. He can catch the ball in the backfield. So Josh Jacobs, I think, has the best chance to be a first-round running back, but this is one of those years, too, and I'm always against taking running backs in the first round because there's always depth, and this year is no exception. I think well into day 3, you're going to be able to get guys who have the potential to be starting running backs in the NFL. And so take advantage of that depth. We had a ton of underclassmen come out again, and you don't need to invest that first-round pick, especially if you're not going to do it on a Saquon Barkley type of guy, that rare prospect.
What about if you're at the back, number 25, and you're a team like now Philadelphia? I don't. They got a lot of needs, it looks like. I mean, they're aging on the offensive line. They're aging on the defensive line. You mentioned the depth of defensive line in this draft, so they might go that route. But, if you're sitting at number 25 and there are a couple of running backs there, does that make sense?
It could. And in 25, everyone thinks, well, there's 32 first-round picks, but not every team has 32 first-round grades. By the time you get to the 25th pick, that's either the last of the guys with first-round grades or the guys who are on the fringe. So the top 50 guys who could go late round 1, early to mid round 2. So if they want to go that route, they could definitely trade down a little bit and target someone later and probably get better value, not have to pull the trigger in the first round. But the one exception, I think, would be Josh Jacobs. I think if you're going to invest the premium pick and really make the bold move for a running back in this draft, he's the guy you're probably going to want to do it on. Otherwise, I think you're going to get the same player in the third round as you're going to get after him. So at 32, as opposed if he's the first running back off the board at 25. So great depth at this running back class, and Jacobs is really the only X factor in the first round mix, I think.
What about on the offensive line? The Eagles are getting old there. Peters, Brooks just had the Achilles. Kelsey, there's been murmurs of him retiring, although you don't typically take a center. If you need some help in that spot, is this the year to go that route?
Not on the top end, certainly. We don't have that stud franchise left tackle. We don't have a Quentin Williams or a Quenton Nelson style guard in this class. So not on the top end. And that's one of those positions I think that we still have to sort out to a very large degree with these all-star games and particularly the Senior Bowl next week. I think we have an idea of kind of where the tiers are, but there's a lot of shuffling to be done within those tiers. But that's another position where I'm not sure I'd be overly excited to address the offensive line in the first round. I'd want to wait. I'd start considering the second, third round. I think that's where the value is going to be. And in that range, there's going to be some really good blockers available depending on what you're looking for, whether it's an interior guy or an edge guy.
Quarterbacks always high profile. Last year, a lot of them. This year, doesn't seem to be as much. Your take on this year's QB class?
There won't be as many of them, but it's going to be every bit as fun just because of the Kyler Murray inclusion. He's just going to be a fascinating prospect to watch throughout this draft process. And, he's one of those guys that you make people like me step back and say, do I need to start reevaluating, self-evaluating what I'm looking for in quarterback prospects, because the game has changed so much in the last 5-10 years. The game's become so much more pass-happy. The rules favor the offense more than they ever have. Maybe this is the time for a guy like Kyler Murray to succeed in the NFL. So he's coming along at the best possible time, but I still have real concerns about his size, and not only the height. He's a shade under 5'10", according to Oklahoma, but just the frame. He's so slight, and he's a guy who runs a lot. He ran for 1,000 yards this past year, so I just don't know if he's going to hold up durability-wise. My initial inclination right now is I don't think he's quite as good of a prospect as Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson's the last pick of the first round. But in my most recent mock draft, I gave Kyler Murray to the Chargers at the end of the first round. I think odds are he will go in round 1. And who knows, maybe is the top 10. It only takes one team to fall in love with you. And he's such a unique prospect that all bets are kind of off and trying to figure out where he's going to go. But I will say this. I don't think he ends up with a team like the Giants or the Jaguars, who have kind of old school brain trusts and decision makers. I don't think they're going to be the ones that right. Go out on that limb.
Scott Wright, DraftCountdown.com. Dwayne Haskins, is he the clear number one?
Not clear. I think Daniel Jones from Duke is a lot closer to him around the league than most people would expect. So I think that's the battle there. And right now, there isn't an obvious fit for either of them in the top 5 overall, but we could see something similar to what we saw a few years ago when the Rams and the Eagles both trade up from outside the top 10 up into the 1 and 2 spots to get their quarterbacks. And I mentioned the Giants and Jaguars as teams looking for quarterbacks, the Broncos at 10, the Dolphins at 13, the Redskins at 15. So I think those are the teams to watch for the top quarterbacks. And then going back to the Senior Bowl again, Drew Lock from Missouri. He's got all the tools to be a top 10 overall pick. And if he has a good Senior Bowl week, I think he can absolutely go in that 10 to 15 range. Whereas right now, I think he's kind of top 50, late round 1, early to mid round 2. So I think Drew Lock potentially has as much money on the line next week in Mobile as any prospect.
Yeah, it should be fun. I know, overall, with all the quarterbacks last year, that draft had a lot of headlines. Which draft do you like better?
It's tough because I like them all. There's always storylines. That's a good question. I guess I like last year's draft just because you had some truly rare prospects, guys who I think got my elite grade at the top. Quenton Nelson, best offensive guard prospect I've ever seen. Saquon Barkley, a 5-star running back. And then I think Sam Darnold had 5-star quarterback potential too, not to mention all those other quarterbacks. So last year was a pretty fun draft. I think that's going to be hard to beat. And I'm pretty stingy with my elite grade. And right now I think Nick Bosa's got the best chance to get it, but I don't foresee this class having more elite players at the very top than last year.
And at the top, is it Bosa definitively for you at number 1?
Probably. The only guy I think is going to challenge him is Quentin Williams from Alabama, who's just fantastic this year. Only the Alabama could lose a top 15 overall pick in Deron Payne and plug in a potential number 1 overall pick in Quentin Williams. Just a dynamic presence on the interior of a defensive line, whether it's stuffing the run and occupying gaps and occupying blockers, or using his quickness to penetrate and wreak havoc in the backfield. He's a pretty special defensive tackle prospect. So I think those are the top 2, and then I think it drops off a little bit. So I think that's going to be the battle. And if Arizona sticks with the number 1 pick, And I think that's going to be their decision. I think that's who they're going to have to decide between, although I think they're very much going to be open for business and willing to trade down.
I want to go back to running back real fast. Kamara, a couple of years ago, he's a third-round pick. Is there the guy that you can get in the third, fourth round at running back that you like?
Yeah, and it's still early. I'm going to see some of these guys in person here soon. But one name that's really intriguing from my perspective is Trayveon Williams from Texas A&M. He's an underclassman who came out. He's 5'9", 200 pounds, really productive. He ran for almost 2,000 yards this year and 16 touchdowns. He's one of those guys that I think you can get the second, third, fourth round who maybe has that potential. But honestly, I think there's 10 guys like that. It's a really deep running back class. We had, I think, 25, 30 underclassmen running backs alone come out. So there's no shortage of options in this class.
All right, the draft is coming, and we'll have it all right here for you live in April on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, Scott Wright, draftcountdown.com as he gets you ready for draft season. Thank you, Scott.
My pleasure. Anytime.